Chapter 71. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the window of the principal's office, Dumbledore's eyes flickered with thought under his half-moon glasses. Raising Wong, Dumbledore muttered to himself and stretched out his hand to call Fawkes to call the little guy over. An old friend happened to bring him some oriental red robes today, but he just didn't know how to soak them. Well, some things must be distinguished after all. The sweet party and the bitter party, one must die. Dumbledore is good at persuading, so, Fawkes flew to his shoulder, and Dumbledore was about to speak, but a silver button in his arms began to heat up. Dumbledore's old face darkened. Gellert, yes, the old, weak, sick and disabled Grindelwald was calling him again. He had just finished dealing with the old guy and appeased a dozen Ministry of Magic. He had just returned to Hogwarts and was preparing to sort out school affairs. Did Grindelwald use some kind of magic to monitor him and know that he was idle? Dumbledore sighed, rubbed his eyebrows, turned around and came to the full-length mirror, changed into a gorgeous moon-white robe, and trimmed his thick white beard. After becoming a spirited old man, he came to a cabinet with satisfaction, opened it and took out some health products that were also brought by old friends. I heard that these health products can supplement calcium and strengthen the body, although I don't know what calcium is. Sometimes it's like this, only when there is a need will it be taken seriously. Those old friends were worried that he was too old to control Grindelwald and protect the magic world, so they sent him all kinds of tonics. Now it's a bargain for Gellert. Carrying the gift box, Dumbledore disappeared in a burst of fire. 10 minutes ago, on the ring outside the castle, Shaw's scalp suddenly tightened, and he turned back to look at Hogwarts. Although he didn't see who it was, he knew in his heart who the divine inquiring eyes just now belonged to. After thinking about it in his heart, it seems that he can't let old Dumbledore be too idle, and he has to reveal more information to his pen pals. Unintentionally, Shaw, Grindelwald, and Dumbledore formed a restrained triangle closed loop. After Shaw waved his hand to easily quiet everyone down, he shook his head at the 12 students who fell to the ground and pretended to be dead. He controlled the electric shock effect very well, so these people probably didn't dare to get up at this moment because of shame. Okay, you can lie down if you like, and remember to collect everyone's stinky socks and pants consciously. Don't use magic to wash them. Someone will supervise you. Shaw teased, making everyone in the audience laugh, but some people couldn't laugh. Cedric was a little unhappy now. Should he organize the badger to practice? After thinking about it, forget it. Don't live so hard. Isn't it good to eat and drink well? Shaw walked down the stage and went directly to the castle. Alice, who was in high spirits, followed the little snakes. Coincidentally, Shaw and Mag, who had come out of the corner and was indignant, had a head-on fight. The two nodded to each other and quickly reached a tacit understanding. Mag then went to find trouble with the little lions angrily. Shaw could still hear Mag's angry scolding faintly in his ears. You are so audacious. You have completely disgraced Gryffindor. Where is your courage? When did you become a conspirator? Humph, you still have the energy to think about it. You still have the nerve to laugh at me. Everyone, do more practice. More questions. I will watch you finish even if I don't sleep. Shaw mourned for the little lion for 3 seconds, and then he had no chance, because a big bat floated out from the bushes at the corner. Snape first stared at Shaw fiercely. Then he glanced at all the little snakes with a cold eye and said sarcastically, "You have really brought shame to Slytherin. We have to rely on 1 or 2 people to turn the tide." Ha, arrogant people may be proud. Proud? How can pride make a first-year student so arrogant? Draco. You really bring shame to the Malfoy family. Come back to my office with me later. Draco's hair was all blown up. He turned his head with a look of despair and looked at the omnipotent Shaw for help. Shaw seemed to have a telepathic connection with him and also turned his head to look at him, very synchronously. After Snape spit out a lot of venom again, he pinched Draco's neck like a chicken and went to school. The little snakes were trembling with fear. Shaw laughed. Draco was unlucky and asked for it. When arranging the schedule before the game, Shaw was ready to let Theodore do Harry in order to fulfill his promise with Snape 100%, but Draco, who had tasted the sweetness, had to fighting Harry once, well, it was always hard for Shaw to refuse his little cousin's request. Now he really deserved it. Thinking of Theodore, Shaw thought of something else and turned back to ask Alice. Where does Theodore usually practice spells? Alice knew this and pointed in a direction. On the east side of the Black Lake, on a pile of rocks. Theodore is indeed diligent and worthy of the trust given by the chief. Well, everything is good, and you are not bad either. Shaw nodded and let Alice, who was full of smiles, take the little snakes back to school first. He came to the east side of the Black Lake by himself, and heard the sound of spells blasting from a pile of rocks. He walked over to take a closer look. Theodore's forehead was sweating and a little embarrassed, but his expression was very determined. This guy was running and jumping around a rock on the rugged rocky beach. He didn't care if his hand was bruised, and he kept casting spells on the stone in the middle with the wand in his hand. And Shaw also found some small animals running out of the forbidden forest nearby, such as rabbits and squirrels, which were eating some nuts nearby. One white rabbit had a bandage on its leg, which was obviously caused by Theodore. Theodore also found someone approaching, and he didn't care who it was. He turned his back and sent out a disarming spell with a wand, but when he saw the person clearly, it was a little late. Fortunately, Shaw reacted quickly, pulled out his wand and flicked it casually, using the curse counter technique to pick up the spell. Then he looked at Theodore with a smile. Theodore hurried forward and bowed. "I'm sorry, Chief, I didn't know it was you." Shaw waved his hand indifferently. "It's okay, vigilance is very good, it deserves praise. Except for being a little passionate occasionally, Theodore is actually a person who is not good at speaking," and he couldn't answer for a while. Shaw looked at the thin, pale boy, and a hint of madness flashed in his cold eyes from time to time. Recalling the conversation with Flitwick before, he didn't let the second half of his life heal his childhood. Shaw was not a leader who would not listen to advice or tolerate suggestions. After self-realization, he also felt that he needed to enlighten the people around him. Although he liked Theodore's ruthless character and way of doing things, he didn't want him to die of madness. He reached out and patted Theodore's shoulder, speaking earnestly. "Theodore, who doesn't have a few pasts that need to be swallowed? Some people cried and admitted, but some people refused to obey. Look up and there is light, look down and there is shadow. Sometimes life is the choice of that moment, so, I need you to be happier." Theodore was stunned, and many things that seemed to be unbearable to look back on flashed in his eyes. His father hated him for insulting and beating him, his father madly abused his beloved pet, and the day after day of being confined in a dark room. It was not until he saw the chief's brilliant light that he felt a glimmer of warmth and hope in the overcast sky. Theodore's face changed, and his pale and abstinent face was a little distorted for a moment, but he could feel the warmth of the palm on his shoulder. He nodded slowly and showed a bright smile. Then he quickly returned to his indifference. "Chief, I understand." Shaw nodded with satisfaction. "Okay, the knot in your heart cannot be untied in a moment, and there are still many days to come. You just need to know that I am behind you." Theodore could not help but straighten his back. "Chief, do you have a task to give me?" The elder said that June Tong was stuck in writing, and this is July snow. "It's unfair. There are not many daily routines in this book, it's all plot, so no matter where I stop writing, there will be the so-called stuck in writing, okay, or I can water down the daily routine." Stop writing during the daily routine. Chapter 72. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hey, GGAD is here again. Nuremberg, Austria. The old tower is still modeled, but it has a more lively atmosphere, and many floors are lit, and the most brilliantly lit is a meeting room in the tower. On a long conference table, except for the first seat on the left, there are 20 or 30 old men sitting at the table. Everyone wears a white shirt with a lapel and a fine suit, with a tie tied properly, hair combed meticulously, and a straight back. Although these old men have silver hair, they are very energetic. The old saints are reporting the recent situation of the witch party to Abernethy, the first seat on the right. Recently, there are hundreds of people who have applied to come to Austria for pilgrimage. The older generation of comrades want to bring their children to see the master. I can no longer refuse their sincere wishes. About the situation where the various magic ministries have begun to target us again, Abernethy, have you reported to the master? The matter of capturing the Phoenix may not be possible before old Percy develops a more powerful space confinement prop, but we have found another mutant species similar to the Thunderbird that can teleport, which may be a substitute. Has the Master fallen? Why is there no further instruction? I request a collective audience. Perhaps Miss Vida can come back earlier to persuade the Master to slow down the infiltration of the Austrian Ministry of Magic. Slow down. If it weren't for Miss Vida, the outside would have been surrounded by Aurors by now. Abernethy looked serious, sitting upright, and didn't say a word. Now it was called a meeting, but in fact it was just an opportunity for old partners to complain. He also had some complaints in his heart. After the Master was rejuvenated, he thought he would do something big. Unexpectedly, after issuing a few collection orders, there was no follow-up, leaving the Saints running around outside, and the Master spent all day either looking at the Muggle information collected or dealing with Dumbledore, his mortal enemy. Cough cough, no, how could I doubt the wise Master? The Master must have some plan, and now he is paralyzing Dumbledore, his mortal enemy. And the news that I sent people to inquire about the Hogwarts student has also come one after another. It just so happens that the Fry family over there is a member of the original witch party. Although the old Fry's attitude is a bit ambiguous now, he did not refuse to provide some information about Shaw. Abernethy did not expect that the other party is still a super genius, and his talent is not inferior to that of the Master in his youth. So is the Master looking for a successor? Or is he secretly attacking Dumbledore, his mortal enemy? The Master's mind is unfathomable and really hard to guess. The camera moves up to Grindelwald's office. Grindelwald is wearing a black hospital gown and a pair of blue half-moon glasses, the same style as Dumbledore. He sits in a carved rocking chair, holding a Muggle book in his hand and reading it with relish. The title of the book is, The Rise and Fall of Dynasties and the Change of Social Structure. Next to him is a burning fireplace, and his two skinny legs are placed on a support frame, covered with a cashmere blanket. Grindelwald's current living state is really a bit leisurely in his old age. Dumbledore, who has been here for a while, is carefully brewing an unknown health product on a coffee table. He put a piece of sugar cube in it, and thought it was not enough, so he put another piece. One piece, and one piece. Looking at the increasingly thick drink in the cup, it also exudes bursts of sweet fragrance. Dumbledore was satisfied, stirred it with a spoon, and then took the porcelain cup to Grindelwald's side. Gellert, it's time to take medicine. Grindelwald glanced at the unknown sticky yellow liquid in the porcelain cup, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help twitching, but Grindelwald didn't say much. He tilted his head and opened his mouth. The meaning was very clear. The corner of Dumbledore's mouth also twitched, but in order for Gellert to stand up as soon as possible, he didn't have to toss him like this, so he waved and called for a chair. After sitting down, he began to feed Gellert with health supplements, one spoonful at a time, like feeding a child. He chatted with a hint of meaning in his mouth. Why have you been studying these Muggle books recently? Grindelwald, who had a bitter-sweet taste in his mouth, smacked his lips before saying. You don't let me ask about the wizarding world, and you have confiscated all the general magic books. You have to let me find something to do for fun, right? Dumbledore took out a white handkerchief and gently wiped the soup stains from the corner of Grindelwald's mouth. Well, that's true. It's good to read more books. How about I recommend you some bedtime fairy tales? Grindelwald pouted. No, they are all weird stories. How could 7 greedy goblins save a Muggle princess? It's unreasonable. Dumbledore continued to feed Gellert a spoonful, and said patiently. Ahem, when you read a story, you can't go into details. You have to look at the educational significance of it. Grindelwald swallowed the health supplement in his mouth with difficulty, turned his head and looked at Dumbledore. You are so sentimental. I am old, don't think about persuading me. I haven't given new orders to those people downstairs, have I? Dumbledore smiled warmly and fed this guy several more spoonfuls. Oh, Gellert, you are a trustworthy person. Your fanatics are really like headless flies recently. Grindelwald only felt the sweet taste in his mouth choking to the top of his head, and shouted in dissatisfaction. I want to drink water. What kind of health supplement is this? It tastes really strange. Dumbledore's eyes flashed with teasing, and he pressed Grindelwald's shoulders. There's a saying in the East, good medicine tastes sweet and is good for the disease, and only by drinking it can you get healthy. Then he ignored Grindelwald's shaking head like a rattle, and directly took the cup and poured it into his mouth. Grindelwald stood up from the rocking chair uncomfortably, retched twice, and hurried to the coffee table to pick up the kettle and drink. Dumbledore laughed happily beside him. The ancients in the East were really wise. Gellert, you're getting better, aren't you, walking as fast as a young man? Grindelwald looked back at Dumbledore with resentment, and was about to refute him, when suddenly his stomach gurgled. Grindelwald's face changed drastically, and he ran to the toilet like a fly, leaving only one sentence. Albus, bring me paper. Dumbledore was stunned, looking at the remaining liquid in the porcelain cup in surprise. Various guesses flashed through his mind. My old friend wants to harm me. It was dinner time in the Hogwarts Hall. Quirrell was in a bad mood today. He heard that Hagrid, the breeder of the three-headed dog, wanted to raise a dragon. In order to get information about the three-headed dog, Voldemort asked him to go to Nocturne Alley to buy dragon eggs tomorrow, so, Quirrell's little money was really going to be gone. When he met some students on the road, he heard that the dishes today were good, so he asked after seeing the elf. He knew that those delicacies were only available in the hall, so Quirrell came to the hall to eat. Life was hard enough, so he should not neglect his body. Quirrell sat down at the end of the teacher's seat. Several dishes appeared on the table automatically. In addition to the English dishes he usually ate, there were 2 dishes he had never seen before. He picked up a piece of slightly burnt but ruddy meat with a fork and put it in his mouth. After chewing a few times, his eyes lit up. Eating the food, Quirrell felt better, and then he found that the atmosphere in the hall today was a little weird. Chapter 73. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Quirrell found that the little lions, in particular, had a bitter face even though they were eating delicious food. Quirrell curled his lips. These little wizards were really ungrateful. How could they be as miserable as me? Quirrell also found that the long table of Ravenclaw was very deserted. Only a dozen little eagles were eating dinner in a distracted manner. Even though there were super delicious food, they were absent-minded. Humph, another group of guys who didn't know what happiness was. Some little eagles wanted to pack those Chinese food, but the food disappeared. They could only put some of the original dishes in the basket was full. If you didn't know, you would think that Hogwarts was going to run out of food. Quirrell knew that there was teleportation magic on the long table in the hall, and there was a long table of the same size in the kitchen, which was controlled by the kitchen elves, so why didn't these elves allow people to take these unknown delicacies away? He was originally planning to take some back as a midnight snack. Hufflepuffs love gourmet food. These little badgers are eating very happily at this moment. They finished their own portion of Chinese food first before eating other food. Although the little badgers complained that the Chinese food in the evening was not as rich as that in the afternoon, they did not notice anything for the time being. However, the little badgers still looked at the head of the Slytherin table with envy from time to time, because there is no word limited here at Shaw, but it is richer than usual, which makes the little badgers swallow their saliva for a while. It's so happy to follow Shaw. Quirrell also looked at the Slytherin table from time to time, thinking of the chattering conversations of the little wizards he met on the road before. Quirrell understood why Shaw was not afraid of him. Maybe he really couldn't beat him. He also understood why Shaw didn't care much about the advanced black magic. After all, his tricks were also very strong, and he was suspected to have inherited Dumbledore's water prison. Quirrell was a little panicked. If Shaw really had a good relationship with Dumbledore, he would have given Shaw a notebook on dark magic. Slytherin long table. Alice and Theodore sat next to Shaw, as well as several students who won the duel for Slytherin today. The dishes for these people were very rich, which was a kind of reward and win over. Well, Draco was not here. He was probably crying and dealing with sticky slugs at this moment. Shaw wanted to help him, but he thought that even Hermione was in a state of fanaticism, but this broken child who lived with him day and night did not move, then just suffer a little. Only when you suffer will you remember who is good to you. Victor and others held back their excitement. After all, they could finally sit next to the chief. Even though the dishes were very delicious, they ate more slowly. Alice was sipping papaya and red date soup in small sips. The chief said that this soup can beautify the skin. She has a good habit of body management, does not eat much Chinese food, and can control certain desires. After Alice finished her soup, she took out a set of tea sets and a small red clay stove from the small box she brought. Once the chief accidentally said that he did not like pumpkin juice and only liked tea. She taught herself tea art, although Alice learned to make tea from a wild way. She is very elegant, and every frown and move is so elegant. In the fragrance of tea, Alice had just made tea and Shao had finished eating. Seeing Shower wipe his mouth, she gently pushed a cup of amber tea in front of Shower, and everything was ready. "Chief, please have tea." Shower nodded without being polite, elegantly picked up the teacup and sniffed it, then took a sip. "Not bad, there is progress." Alice smiled gently, glanced at Mrs. Meng at the other end of the long table, and spoke. "Chief, Mrs. Meng wants to meet you after dinner. Maybe she wants to pledge allegiance to you." Short took another sip of tea and said after a pause. "Forget about pledging allegiance. He is not qualified to get the sequence poker. You can take him to work first. If he performs well, he can be developed into an outsider." Alice nodded without questioning, and then poured a cup for Theodore, who had also finished his meal. "Theodore, try it." The chief said that this oriental way of tasting tea means that after suffering, there will be sweetness. Theodore is not usually in this position, but he was forcibly pulled here by Shaw today, which made him very uncomfortable. Looking at the white jade teacup, Theodore always glanced at Shaw's way of drinking tea, and then learned to hold the cup and drink tea. Because of his inexperience, he drank a big sip, and did not feel the sweetness after suffering, but his tongue was burned and numb. But Theodore was a ruthless man. Except for raising his delicate eyebrows, he did not show any other painful expressions, and nodded in praise. "It tastes really good." After that, he stood up and bowed slightly to Shaw. "Chief, I will go to complete the task you assigned." After getting Shaw's approval, Theodore fled away. Alice covered her mouth lightly. "Theodore, in fact, it's quite cute." Shaw nodded his approval, and didn't mind Alice teasing Theodore more. Theodore needed more communication. After drinking tea, Shaw told Alice a few things and then stood up and left first. He glanced at the other 3 long tables of the colleges. Their performance was expected. It's normal for the little lions to be unhappy. They are probably happy to go to bed at 12 o'clock tonight. As for the little eagles, in fact, after negotiating with Professor Flitwick, the door knocker received his instructions and didn't make things difficult for the little eagles today. But these little eagles were bitten by snakes one day, so now they don't even dare to go out. Only a few fearless little eagles come out to transport food and grass. As for Hufflepuff, they can only boil honey badgers in warm water. I saw Quirrell was there in the corner of my eye, and their eyes happened to meet. Shore gave him a malicious smile, and Quirrell's body trembled inexplicably. "Voldemort, coward. A child scared you like this?" "Quirrell, master, I'm not afraid." "Voldemort, then why are you shaking?" "I thought you were in danger and woke me up from my sleep." "Quirrell." "Voldemort, well, what's wrong with this kid? He's not interested in advanced dark magic. Have times changed? Quirrell." As soon as Shaw left the hall, he was stopped by Harry, who came from behind. The kid was still wiping his greasy mouth with his sleeves. Then Harry greeted him nervously. "Shao, Vice Dean, hello." Seeing Harry so nervous, Shaw touched his chin. "Is he so scary now?" "He is still a little boy with red lips and white teeth. Maybe he was too harsh on Harry before," so he stretched out his hand and rubbed Harry's messy hair like an adult. "Harry, is there something wrong?" "Oh, by the way, the disarming spell used during the day was good. Are you here to ask for a gift?" Harry felt the rare warmth again, and he was no longer nervous. He smiled and said something that didn't mean it. "No, I just saw that Draco didn't come to dinner, so I came to ask." Shore's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he had thought of a fun idea, and he complained to Draco. "Draco? Well, he is suffering in Snape's office now. Do you want to help him share the burden? I heard that Draco has to deal with 2 large buckets of slugs." Harry became nervous all of a sudden. He had dealt with slugs once, and it was disgusting. Harry hesitated. Snape didn't like him very much, and even targeted him. In the end, he nodded bravely. "I'll go help Draco now. He was injured by me today, so he can't be too tired." Shaw watched Harry run away and couldn't help but smile. "Oh, it's so hard for me. It's all Harry's fault for being too brave during the day. Draco was also implicated by you. I hope Snape is satisfied with this gift delivered to his door. I also make up for the promise I didn't fulfill before." Shaw felt a little guilty after muttering a few words, so he thought about going back to carefully prepare a mysterious gift for Harry, thinking all the way. He went to the Slytherin lounge, back in the dormitory. I found another super easy to talk fan letter sent by Owl on the desk. Chapter 74. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dear Mr. Black, hello, you are right, Grindelwald, you are too narrow-minded. Regarding the greatest emperors in the world, you disdain to lash out at the 4 monarchs I proposed, Napoleon, Caesar, Alexander, and Hannibal. You also refuted people like Constantine who combined politics and religion. You only admire the first emperor of China in the East. This week, I read a lot of Chinese history translated into English, and even asked someone to go to the British Museum to copy many rare books that were passed on to China, which are not recorded by the Chinese official. After careful reading and research, I found that you are right. There is no Qin Shi Huang in Europe. Even though Napoleon almost unified the European land, he did not unify the hearts of the people in European countries. Europe now has many large and small countries. It is true that there has not been a man of great talent and strategy in history who has fundamentally eliminated the cultural barriers in people's hearts. Not only that, I admire the magnanimity of the first emperor, even though he was a Muggle emperor. Not only those contributions such as the same writing system and the same will gauge, the first emperor was consistent for the China he created. He had 200,000 elite troops to defend the northern Xiongnu and 500,000 elite troops to defend the southern China. However, the power center in the Central Plains had no soldiers available, allowing some scoundrels to steal the country's prestige. It was a pity that the Qin dynasty was destroyed. Recently, I had some difficulty reading the Six Kingdoms theory you recommended, but I still learned a lot from the irregular translation. Forgive an old man who has lived in seclusion for too long. He is a little slow to accept new things. The progress of learning Chinese is not fast. For the time being, I don't have too many thoughts after watching Six Kingdoms theory. By the way, as an ordinary wizard, I don't have much experience in the practice of elements exclusive to legends, so I can only provide you with some of my lifelong insights into magic elements. In today's magic world, the most popular ones are indeed water, fire, wind and earth, represented by the 4 founders of Hogwarts. Although I don't know the thunder element you practice, you can learn from other elements. When you practice normally, your dearest fan, Pearl Rouge. Shaw put down the letter and smiled knowingly. Those topics about the rise and fall of dynasties and the achievements of emperors were not brought up by himself. Grindelwald wanted to discuss them, as if he was instilling ambition in Shaw. Then Shaw criticized him in reverse, and took out the first emperor he admired most to counter-educate Grindelwald, and he also tricked this old guy into learning Chinese. It's very interesting to think that Grindelwald, a 100-year-old man, has to learn Pinyin and look up dictionaries, and speak slurred words. Maybe Dumbledore will be implicated. After all, his letters always mentioned that the old principal was too idle, and all school affairs were handed over to the vice principal. Shaw thought about these nonsense for a while. What puzzled him was that this old fan had been pretending to be pitiful recently, always saying that he was lonely and miserable. Is the emperor pitiful? Shaw shook his head, took out the letter and wrote an interesting reply to Grindelwald. After sending the letter away by Owl, Shaw took the letter to the common room and sat on the high platform. While supervising everyone's evening self-study, he studied the part of the letter about ordinary people's research on elements and read it repeatedly. To be honest, Shaw also flipped through the Hogwarts library, and he also looked for it himself and asked others to help him find it, but there were too few books about elements, and the few limited books were just a superficial study. So he could only ask the old fan who was an ordinary person. Grindelwald's explanation did benefit Shaw a lot. It gave him a deeper understanding of the research on the element of thunder. He glanced at the common room and saw that everyone seemed to be more serious today. The young man is teachable, But he also found that many people seemed to be without socks, and the 6 male and female students who challenged him were not in the lounge at this time, and their ears moved, faintly heard the sound of retching coming from some dormitories. The retching was very miserable, as if they were going to vomit bile. Oh, that's it. Shaw suddenly realized, so he didn't pay much attention to it, just rewarding and punishing. At this time, Draco, who was all sticky, walked into the common room. This little brat had no spirit at all, and his platinum hair was drooping. When he passed by the crowd, it was very effective in warding off evil spirits, and the other little snakes pinched their noses and quickly moved away. Draco, come here. Shaw stretched out his hand and called him over. After Draco came over, he looked at Shaw with resentment, lowered his head and didn't speak. Shaw wrinkled his nose and quickly gave him a clean-up. You look like you have lost your soul. Didn't I ask Harry to help you? Draco felt even more wronged when he heard this. Harry might as well not go. Draco's resentful words almost made Shaw unable to hold back his laughter. He had some guesses in his mind and asked nonchalantly. Oh, tell me, what happened? Draco then began to complain. His small voice was filled with tears. I was studying magic well with the dean in the potion office, but I didn't expect Harry to come and yell and say he wanted to help me deal with the slugs. As a result, the dean asked me if I had a good relationship with Harry, so I naturally patted my chest and nodded, and then, I really dealt with the slugs with Harry for 2 hours, and I almost felt sick to death. Shaw's mouth twitched. Oh, then Harry is wrong. Draco choked and said with a tangled look. Harry is kind-hearted. I don't blame him. Okay, don't think too much. Just treat it as free potion materials for you to practice. Short tidied up Draco's slicked back hair, comforted Draco with a few words, and then let him go back to wash up. Nothing happened the next night. The next day, 6:30 in the morning, even though it was not yet 7 o'clock, the common room was already bustling again, because the headmaster announced it yesterday before the end of the self-study. This morning, 10 people will be selected again to go to Ravenclaw with him. All the little snakes are shocked. They didn't expect the headmaster to conquer another college again, so this morning, everyone dressed up as decently as possible, and everyone was a spirited young man. Although educating Ravenclaw is not as enjoyable as playing Gryffindor, there are many beautiful girls in Ravenclaw, so this morning, those adolescent male classmates were howling and started to get up at 6 o'clock to dress up. So when Shaw walked into the common room, he saw many pairs of wolf-like eyes. Shaw came to the high platform with doubts, overlooking all the little snakes below. Well, everyone is in good spirits today. Okay, I won't waste my words. Let's stick to the conditions from last time. Those with level 4 disarming spell will be selected directly. For the others, Alice, you will choose. Remember, you must be able to represent Slytherin. After seeing more people stand up than last time, Shaw directly handed the task to Alice. After a selection, Draco still failed. He enviously watched Theodore hold his chest and head high and follow Shaw. This time it was Draco's turn and he almost dug his nails into his palm, but he was afraid of pain and failed. He had to turn around and say to the 2 followers. Go to bed an hour later in the future, and we will practice more. Chapter 75. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shaw brought 10 little snakes with excellent temperament to the Ravenclaw Tower. At the door knocker, he met Hermione who had been waiting there. Shaw looked at Hermione in front of him, resisted the urge to rub his eyes with his hands, and felt dizzy. How should I describe Hermione today? She is not as careless and sloppy as before, but very different. Hermione's fluffy curly hair was made very smooth by her, with a little wave, and her originally prominent front teeth were also made normal by magic. Not to mention Hermione's high appearance, she has an intellectual temperament, with a slim blue and white Ravenclaw school uniform, holding a book in her hand, and wearing black square glasses. She is even more bookish. Only Hermione is still a little lowly, otherwise it is not an exaggeration to say that she is a top schoolgirl. Seeing Shaw, Hermione wanted to scream excitedly, but she remembered the intensive training of her dress and etiquette by the seniors last night, so she resisted the urge to greet him. Sure, hello, you are here. Shaw also resisted the urge to reach out and rub the girl's hair, which was finally smooth, and praised her warmly. Well, Hermione, you are really beautiful today. That's how it is in the West, praise must be said in person. Hermione's expression was indeed full of joy. Really? This is me. Sure stopped Hermione from talking about how she was tormented by the seniors. Okay, there is business to do, let's go in. Hermione immediately regained her composure. She walked to Shaw's right and gave Theodore a sweet smile. Theodore. Sir, I am Shaw's tour guide today. Can you please step back? Theodore's stern face was a little surprised, but he was quite gentlemanly. He nodded and stepped back, Alice on the other side of Shaw. After Hermione stood still, she extended her hand to Shaw and made a ladylike invitation. Please, the Dean has been waiting inside for a long time. Shaw looked at the interaction between his subordinates, said nothing, and stepped forward to answer the door knocker's question. Door knocker, 9,823 is equal to 3, 5,218 is equal to 2, 3,896 is equal to 4, 1471 equals. The Ravenclaw common room is decorated in sky blue and bronze. The whole lounge is round, and the dome guarded by 12 white stone pillars is painted with stars. Between the pillars, from the arched windows with blue ribbon curtains, you can see almost all the scenery of Hogwarts, which is the best viewing point in the whole school. The furnishings in the lounge are more like a clean library, but today the seats in the middle of the field have been moved aside. When Shaw led everyone into the Ravenclaw common room, the young eagles had already stood in 7 rows in an orderly manner. Professor Flitwick stood at the front, short but very stylish. Shaw looked at more than 150 young eagles with a bookish air. About 70% of them were girls, all of them were graceful. However, the way many older sisters looked at him made Shaw a little flustered. He thought to himself, Eagle House should be easier to manage than imagined. Should. Flitwick saw Shaw coming and walked over enthusiastically. Sure. Shaw bowed and shook hands with Professor Flitwick. Hello, Professor. Flitwick pulled him to the front of the crowd. Well, I guess everyone knows Shaw, so I don't need to introduce him too much. Many senior female students immediately covered their mouths and laughed, and Flitwick coughed a few times to quiet them down. Since Shaw is here, the rules of Ravenclaw will be the same as Slytherin and Gryffindor. Of course, we can't forget our own characteristics. Flitwick said a few words solemnly, and then signaled Shaw to start to rectify. Shaw looked around, and the little eagles had no curiosity at all. Perhaps he had already become famous, or the legend was too intimidating. Anyway, force could not be used. I miss Marcus, this chicken, and the little eagles are all well behaved, and the lounge is still like a library, which is very curry. Shaw suddenly felt that there was nothing to rectify about Ravenclaw, but since he was here, this college had to be molded according to his wishes. Shaw stepped forward and said loudly. Hello, everyone. Hello, Shaw, come to Ravenclaw more often in the future, the senior sister will have delicious food. Sure, do you really have to eat blood pudding every day? Sure, I've finished reading those elementary school math books in one night. When will the second set be distributed? Yes, I've finished reading them too. I even played with the door knocker for a while this morning. It's not difficult at all. Sure, Hermione said you are a magician, show me your skills. Well, Shaw just said hello, and then was drowned by all kinds of chirping sounds. Shaw found that he was too optimistic. The eagles were quiet just now, maybe just to give Professor Flitwick face. The eagles are actually a group of people living in their own world, with strong curiosity and thirst for knowledge, and they don't pay much attention to the secular perspective. This kind of performance, well, the most prominent analogy is Luna. Shaw's scalp tingled, watching the eagles getting ready to move, and they seemed to be about to surround him. He quickly took out his wand and built a water barrier around him. Not for attack, but to protect himself. Boys, you must protect yourself well outside. A 6th grade senior girl couldn't help it the most. She curiously reached out and touched the water barrier, and was electrocuted. Except for the girl's friend who stepped forward to help, the other eagles didn't care at all. Instead, they were curious about the water flow spell and began to analyze it in detail. Well, is it an enhanced version of the spring-like water? Not only that, there must be a transformation spell, which is a compound spell. No, you are wrong. Look at Catherine's twitching. It also has an electric shock effect. Well, is it the spell itself, or is it for some other reason? Very interesting, I have to go to the library to check it out later. Shore looked up at the sky and was speechless. The eagles were so eager to learn that he didn't know how to rectify them for a while. Hermione walked to his side and whispered. Shore, knowledge, knowledge, and more advanced knowledge. Shore nodded, pointed his wand to the sky, and a firework exploded in the air. Bang! Be quiet, that the eagles looked up at Shaw blankly. Shaw coughed. Now is not the time for you to study the topic, but don't worry, there will be countless topics for you to study in the future. I promise that they are all unheard of by you. Really? Then. Okay, why not now? Bang! Shore did not wait for them to finish and blew another firework into the sky, he deliberately said with a stern face. Although you are very studious and this habit is very good, it does not mean that you can ignore my authority. From now on, you are not allowed to speak unless I ask. Hee, Shaw is so domineering, sister likes it. Okay, don't be mean to us, we just listen. Shore's forehead was full of black lines. The male students of Ravenclaw seemed to be okay, but these female students were a little too lawless. It is estimated that they were spoiled by Professor Flitwick. He resisted the urge to give these female students an electric shock, but he promised Professor Flitwick, but if it was a punishment of a sea of questions, it seemed useless. Didn't you hear what the two top students just said? They finished elementary school mathematics in one night. Without restrictions and rewards and punishments, this authority cannot be established. Chapter 76. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shaw originally thought that he needed to put pressure on these students to actively pursue knowledge, but now he found that it might not be necessary, then he would do the opposite. Bang! A louder firework exploded, finally stopping the chatter of the little eagles again. Shaw quickly brainstormed. I announced 3 things, without waiting for the little eagles to ask questions, Shaw spoke faster. First, establish a database of learning. Although Hogwarts has tens of millions of books, my black family has also been passed down for thousands of years and has a lot of unique and profound knowledge that is rare in the world. I will donate a part of it for free, and add the mathematical, physical and chemical knowledge collected from the Muggle world to establish a database of learning. Second, the points system. Advanced knowledge cannot be obtained for free. If you want to obtain the knowledge in the sea of learning, I need you to make certain contributions. In addition, the usual etiquette and discipline will also be counted into the points, so if you are disobedient, I guess you can only watch others swim proudly in the infinite ocean of knowledge. Third, that is a cliché, just like the recent rules of Gryffindor and Slytherin. This time, after Shaw finished speaking, no one finally spoke. The little eagles fell into deep thought and digested it for several minutes. The last 7th grade student spoke again. Shore, how should we? Shore interrupted with a stern face. You, asking questions without raising your hand, will lose 10 points in the learning sea. The little eagle was dumbfounded. He wanted to ask as soon as he opened his mouth, but he was afraid of being deducted again, so he could only retreat back to the crowd in dismay. Shore secretly breathed a sigh of relief. This trick really worked. Penelope, who was dressed very beautifully today, raised her hand. Shore noticed that this pretty female senior seemed to be the young lady who invited him to Ravenclaw on the train, so he raised his hand to signal. Please go ahead. Penelope's eyes flashed with joy. Shore, may I ask when the Learning Sea database will be established? What are the specific rules of the point system, and can we participate in the spell guidance class you organize on weekends? By the way, you usually like. Shore smacked his lips, thinking that he had done nothing wrong in tricking Hermione into coming to Ravenclaw. In terms of the attitude of asking questions and the level of being able to talk so much, many little eagles are basically the same. After Penelope asked all the questions she had been thinking about, she looked at Shaw eagerly. Shaw pondered for about half a minute before speaking. It will take quite some time to establish the database. You can study math, physics and chemistry first. Don't be proud. The difficulty of the questions asked by the door knocker is increasing every day. I don't think anyone wants to sleep in the corridor. As for the points, they will be calculated from now on. The other rules are similar to those of the other two colleges. You can naturally participate in the spell guidance class. Shaw only answered a few questions. He was too lazy to explain some other gossips asked by Penelope. Shaw then waved his hand. Alice understood and began to assign people to conduct preliminary etiquette training for the young eagles. The few Slytherin boys who came this time wanted to get into the group of Ravenclaw girls. There was no way. The Ravenclaw girls were too beautiful and had good temperament, but they were not easy to approach, so, however, after being looked at unkindly by Alice, the little snakes became modest gentlemen again. Shaw retreated to the back and secretly wiped the sweat from his head. The country of women is really terrible. Flitwick, who had been watching silently, smiled and said at this time. How is it, not easy? Shaw shook his head. I made the mistake of empiricism. After all, I was not well prepared. I didn't expect that Ravenclaw students are usually like this. Flitwick laughed. In fact, they are all good children, but they are too individual and free and easy. In class, they are still very well behaved. Shaw had countless complaints to spit. Isn't it your fault that the little eagles are usually like this? Flitwick then said solemnly. Are you really willing to donate your family collection? Even if your collection is not as rich as Hogwarts, it is almost as good in terms of fine and rare books. Shaw has a general plan for the future throne, so he doesn't care about the spread of family collections. Why not use a lot of tools? Of course, he must be selfless now. Knowledge is good knowledge only when it can be used. It is just a pile of waste paper lying in the dark library and gathering dust. Flitwick couldn't help but admire. You are a child with a big heart. Flitwick still had doubts in his heart. No one is truly selfless, but no one is perfect. Being able to contribute is better than being selfish, so he didn't mean to get to the bottom of it. The two chatted during the time. The etiquette team was teaching in an orderly manner. In fact, the little eagle's usual habits were already very good, but they were not so strict, and they were not as excited as they were when they faced Shaw just now when facing the teachings of the little snakes. The reason was that Shaw had too many auras and mysteries, which aroused the little eagle's strong desire to explore, so when the little eagles were receiving etiquette instructions from the little snakes, they always asked some private questions about Shaw, such as, does your chief really whip a girl's back every day? Is your chief an old monster who has rejuvenated? Otherwise it would not make sense to be so strong, and not magical at all. Does your chief have a girlfriend? What are his hobbies? The little snakes naturally began to refute the rumors and praised Shaw as unparalleled in the world. Of course, there are also people who don't care about Shaw, such as the big sisters gathered around Theodore. While they pretended to agree with Theodore's guidance, they teased this expressionless and abstinent little boy. Theodore was so regretful at this moment. He thought there would be a passionate battle to fight, but the result. He swore that he would never come again next time. Let Draco come instead. After Alice arranged the teaching matters, she was going to come back to ask Shaw about the two things that he suddenly announced before, and the terms of points had to be urgently formulated, but she saw Hermione following Shaw all the time, and the other party stood quietly without saying a word. Alice suddenly felt very hostile, but Hermione took the lead. She took the initiative to come over, and quickly showed the poker cards in her palm. Hello, Alice, my name is Hermione. I am the only student in Ravenclaw who holds poker cards. Please take care of me in the future. Alice's beautiful eyes narrowed, and a thoughtful look flashed across her eyes. She saw that Hermione held the 10 of clubs, which was considered a very high sequence even in the future throne organization. It can only mean that the chief values this female Ravenclaw very much. Alice immediately smiled like a flower, pulled Hermione to the side, and used her wand to set up ear blocking and listening around her. Then she said to Hermione solemnly. In the future, you should also call the chief, don't shrug, we are followers, this is very disrespectful. Hermione was stunned for a moment, and then said seriously. I know. Alice nodded with satisfaction and continued. The chief probably hasn't told you yet. In fact, holding this kind of sequence playing cards, in the future, for the management of Ravenclaw, you need to pay more attention to what kind of talents there are. After hearing this, Hermione touched her chin and thought seriously. Senior sister, I think Ravenclaw is not suitable for selecting warriors, but more suitable for discovering and researching talents, so when selecting talents, we can't only focus on the ability to release spells. Although Alice is arrogant, she is not stubborn. Only then did she look at Hermione with a higher opinion. You make sense. Regarding the talent preference of the 4 colleges, we really need to consult the chief. Is this not a writer's block? Hashtag, it's the little badger's turn in the next chapter. Chapter 77. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Shaw escaped from the Ravenclaw common room with difficulty, and hurriedly wiped off the lipstick on his face that someone had put on him. This was because he just couldn't resist the enthusiasm of the little eagles, and had no choice but to perform a close-up magic. Since he was close, he was naturally surrounded by female perverts. The young ladies really had no resistance to the handsome little boy. Some Western concepts are still very avant-garde. In order to encourage wizards to have more children, the Ministry of Magic did not prohibit students from early love in the education order, and there were a lot of people who got married after graduation, so. Shaw glanced at Theodore, his fellow sufferer who was brought out by him, and the two said in tacit understanding. I will never come to Ravenclaw again. 2.10 minutes later, Shaw said goodbye to Theodore and came to the door of the principal's office again. There was no way. Fawkes stopped the letter on the road. Big red robe. Short read out the entry password and walked up the spiral staircase, thinking about Dumbledore's purpose in looking for him. It seemed that the noise was too loud, but there was no way. His Conquer Hogwarts second ring had been stuck at 57% for several days. Shaw wanted to improve his strength and fight Quirrell/Voldemort before Christmas, so he had to get the second-level faith value and legendary points. Recalling the sharp look yesterday afternoon, why didn't the old bee look for him at that time? Shaw was thinking about what excuse to use to divert the old bee's attention this time. Should he use Quirrell, the crown, or Harry this time? There are many excuses. It depends on which one to choose, such as the Ben in Ron's hand, the Horcrux ring in the Riddle House in Great Hampton, etc. Well, except for Quirrell, he didn't want to talk about anything else. Arriving at the principal's office, Shaw knocked on the door 3 times, and the door answered. Shaw stepped out and looked around. Dumbledore was sorting many gift boxes in front of a huge cabinet. Principal, what are you doing? Oh, it's Shaw. Come on, do me a favor and check the production dates on these gift boxes. Shaw, although Shaw wondered whether the items in the magic world would have production dates, he still stepped forward to help Dumbledore check whether there were production dates on the gift boxes. After looking through several gift boxes, he found that many of them were indeed high-end health products in the Muggle world. Some are indeed quite old, and can even be said to be antiques, such as the polar bird's nest that is more than 200 years old. When it was unpacked, it was all moldy. Alas, as I get older, more people care about my health, but these old friends also forwarded gifts from others for who knows how many years to me. I don't know if this is good or bad for me. Dumbledore said with a little complaint while sorting. Shaw raised his eyebrows. The old bee had something to say. This is really not good. Imposing some self-righteous will on others may bring more troubles to others. Dumbledore put down a carved box in his hand, which contained a ginseng as big as a carrot. He turned his head and said kindly. It seems that you understand this principle, but why can't you do it yourself? Shaw smiled and took the carved wooden box containing ginseng. If the principal gave this to me, I would take it. He then kicked an expired gift box on the ground aside. If you give this to me, I will throw it away. Dumbledore's eyes flickered a few times and he said with a smile. But few people have your judgment. It is difficult for the little wizards to distinguish between good and bad. Shaw bent down and continued to help Dumbledore sort out the gift boxes, saying in his mouth. Doesn't this require the guidance of a wise man? Oh, Shaw, do you think you are a wise man? I don't know if I am a wise man, but at least I am a brave man who dares to move forward. Shaw did not answer the question directly. Without waiting for the old bee to ask back, he asked a completely unrelated question. Principal, do you know about the 100 schools of thought in the East? Dumbledore didn't care about Shaw's change of subject. Anyway, with his wisdom, he could always make it right. I know, recently for some reasons, I have really studied some pharmacological cultures of the mysterious East. It is really interesting. Shaw knew Dumbledore's underlying meaning and smiled knowingly. In that case, why don't I tell you a little Oriental fable? Dumbledore narrowed his blue eyes. He was always the one telling stories to others, but every time he came to Shaw, he would be the first to be defeated. This is a child with a strong desire to perform. It seems that Shaw likes the East very much. Then I will listen attentively. I hope it is a thought-provoking story. Shaw's hands kept moving, and he spoke slowly. There was a blind man, holding a lantern on the road in the middle of the night. A very prestigious scholar passed by with his students. The scholar did not directly ask the blind man why he lit a lantern since he could not see, but began to think about it himself, and then instilled his wise thoughts into his students. If the blind man lights a lamp not for himself, but to illuminate others, he is a Confucian who advocates benevolence and righteousness. If the blind man lights a lamp to prevent himself from being hit by others, he is a Mahist who advocates non-aggression. If the blind man lights a lamp because he thinks that lighting a lamp at night is a customary thing and a rule, then he is a legalist. If the blind man lights a lamp just when he is in a good mood and does not light it when he is in a bad mood, he is a Taoist who follows his heart. Shaw said this, turned his head and looked at Dumbledore, and asked meaningfully. What kind of school do you think the principal thinks the blind man belongs to? Or is the headmaster the scholar? Dumbledore lowered his head, letting his deep blue eyes look over his half-moon glasses and look at Shaw seriously. Well, people really can't be self-righteous. Then I, a self-righteous scholar, would like to ask you, a blind man, why do you light a lamp at night? Shaw knew that Dumbledore was impatient. He only needed to ask himself why his hands were getting longer and longer, and he was about to replace him as the headmaster. Shaw did not answer directly, but expressed his deeper understanding of the fable. In fact, it doesn't matter what the scholar thinks. I am indeed a blind man, like a person who can't see the road ahead. The lamp in my hand is the courage to walk at night and the heart lamp to explore the light. Unlike those world-famous scholars, who can only talk big and boast, but do not take action, and wait for the night to be eternal and the world to rot. You are right, headmaster. Dumbledore's body shook slightly, not because he was accused by Shaw again as an inactive scholar, but he suddenly felt that Shaw's words were so familiar. Is this what Gellert called the change of prophecy? It's not that he didn't guess that the starting point was Shaw, otherwise his attitude would not be so ambiguous. After all, Shaw is good at using the power of thunder, which has both the power of destruction and the meaning of rebirth. Dumbledore suddenly felt that Shaw was very dangerous, but he didn't think it was dangerous, and his mood was complicated for a while. As the guardian of the magic world, how could Dumbledore not know the potential hidden dangers in the magic world? But human nature is like this. The old bee is too emotional and not as vigorous as Grindelwald. He hopes that any change will be take it slow, for fear of causing too much trouble. He has also implemented some measures over the years, like a tireless bee, patching up the broken wizarding world bit by bit, for example, reducing the gap between Muggles, half-bloods and pure-bloods. Families like Weasley and Burns were gradually guided by him to be pro-Muggle, for example, encouraging wizards to have children. To put it bluntly, the wizard's disaster was not that Muggle technology came later, but that there were too few people. For example, but Voldemort set back his efforts in the British wizarding world by decades. Dumbledore slowly came back to his senses, seeing that the gift boxes had been put away. Shaw had already generously sat at the table to make tea, and even sliced the radish-sized ginseng to make tea. Chapter 78. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The headmaster's office was filled with the aroma of tea. Except for the gurgling sound of boiling water, the room seemed so peaceful and quiet. At this moment, Shaw was no longer here. Only Dumbledore was left drinking ginseng tea at his desk, thinking about the 3 rules Shaw had just agreed with him. Shaw's sonorous voice seemed to still echo in his ears. First, I will not promote overly dangerous ideas in school. I will only restore the appearance of a school. Second, I will help the headmaster protect Harry and keep a close eye on Quirrell. Third, based on the few words left by my father, it is inferred that there are at least 5 to 7 Horcruxes left by Voldemort. I can help the headmaster slowly find them. The information contained in these 3 messages was really too huge. As for Shaw's promise not to promote overly dangerous ideas, this can only be observed later. He did not object to temporarily improving the self-protection ability of the little wizard. He was worried that Shaw would take the same path as Voldemort. Power and prestige would breed ambition, but compared to Grindelwald's affairs, these are temporarily out of my time. After all, it is impossible to really imprison Shaw or send him to Azkaban. When I have time in the future, I must give Shaw more care and guidance, and Voldemort is really crazy, daring to play with souls like this. Split so many Horcruxes. How many clues did Shaw's father leave for Voldemort's former confidant Regulus? Who is Shaw's mother? It has not been found out yet. For Shaw to help me find the Horcruxes, and it is already being implemented. It is also good. Someone is running around for me, a centenarian, which is always a good thing, and Shaw actually noticed my concern for Harry and my suspicion of Quirrell, but after flipping through a few pages of Shaw's notebooks on Voldemort's fiery curse and serpent trick, the old bee was relieved. Such a keen observation, doesn't he yearn for super strong black magic? This kind of snake magic is quite powerful. While Dumbledore was thinking, he drank a pot of fragrant ginseng tea unconsciously. Suddenly, he felt a little hot. Shaw left the principal's office and came to a balcony to enjoy the morning breeze, slowly relieved his nervous heart. Just now, Dumbledore was not a man of honor and actually used legilimency on him, although it didn't work on Shaw who had a full-level brain occlusion, but this represents the attitude of the old bee. As a last resort, he could only offer 3 rules to barely deal with this conversation. It's so difficult. Shaw's current situation is in a dead loop. The more attention Dumbledore pays, the more he has to speed up the pace of conquering Hogwarts, and then be more concerned by the old bee. But to qualify for the chess table, strength is the foundation. Conquer the 4 colleges, gain legendary points and faith points, then defeat Quirrell/Voldemort's remnant soul, gain a lot of faith points and reputation, and then improve your strength again, and then attack the pure blood at Christmas. This is a virtuous cycle. Can't let the old bee be so idle. Why do old men stare at my kind little boy every day? Perverted. I need to call someone. Shaw thought about it in his heart, and then strode to the Slytherin lounge. Super easy to talk to pen pal, it all depends on you. After Shaw rushed to write a letter to Grindelwald, Dumbledore left Hogwarts on Tuesday. The Saints suddenly made a big move. Several small magic ministries in Northern Europe sent news that a large number of Saints were catching a mutant Thunderbird, so Dumbledore had to leave. The campus life at Hogwarts is generally leisurely. The years passed in a flash. More than a week has passed, and the reorganization of Ravenclaw has been quite smooth. They are very self-motivated in morning and evening self-study. The progress of mathematics learning is amazing. Now they have started to learn elementary physics and chemistry. Shaw is very satisfied. The progress of the task of conquering Hogwarts, second ring, has reached 70%. Just it was Victor who always mentioned that the girls from Ravenclaw kept talking about him and Theodore, and asked people to send many small gifts. Shaw even found a small cake containing aphrodisiac in those gifts. These girls were too fierce, and now Shaw and Theodore are not willing to go to the hall for dinner. On this day, Shaw finished a difficult potion class and saw that Snape still didn't blink at him. He had to say goodbye to the other little snakes, left the classroom in a chic manner, and prepared to go back to the dormitory for dinner alone. On the way, he was stopped by a group of little badgers. Hufflepuff's handsome, sunny and handsome Cedric stepped forward and greeted him shyly. "Sure, hello, I'm Cedric Diggory. Sorry for interrupting you. I want to talk to you on behalf of Hufflepuff." Shaw was stunned for a moment, but he didn't feel surprised. After all, the badgers have been boiled in warm water for a week, so they must be tasty. These little badgers must have cried in the toilet for a long time, but now they can't help it. Shaw smiled warmly and shook hands with Cedric. "Hello, what can I do for you?" Cedric was a little embarrassed to speak, but he felt the burning eyes of his compatriots behind him, so he just said it directly. "It's like this, why is the Chinese food getting less and less recently, but the amount of the other 3 colleges is not less? We went to the kitchen to ask, and the elves who used to have a good relationship with us didn't make it for us alone. After thinking about it, we can only ask you. Cedric swallowed his saliva when he said this, and his friends behind him were similar to him, sure showed a look of realization, and then he was heartbroken and exaggerated and talked nonsense. I'm so sorry, the supply of Chinese food has been integrated into a reward and punishment system called the Shuahai point system, and the other 3 colleges are involved. In fact, the 3 colleges do not supply unlimited quantities, they exchange them with points. As for the decreasing supply of Hufflepuff, I'm very sorry, some of the raw materials of Chinese food are shipped from tens of thousands of miles away, which are very precious. It's already very tight to satisfy the students who exchange points for food. I've tried my best to provide Hufflepuff with a little bit to satisfy their cravings. Shore's sincere speech silenced Cedric and a group of badgers. They are all loyal and kind people, and they understand Shaw's difficulties, but his stomach is really disappointing. Gurgle. N. The gurgling sound immediately became like the croaking of frogs. Cedric scratched his head, smiled apologetically at Shaw, and turned back to talk quietly with several seniors. Shore waited patiently. More than 10 minutes later, Cedric came over again, looking a little hesitant. Shore, if Hufflepuff is also included in the academic point system you mentioned, we can only exchange points for food. Can you allocate resources in this area? Shore almost broke his defense. Are the badgers so thoroughly rotten? Chapter 79. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Are you sure? We are sure. Cedric nodded firmly. Shore didn't believe that there were people who were really willing to degenerate, so he asked directly. Can you tell me why? Points can be exchanged for advanced knowledge, which is an opportunity to make a further step in life. Cedric smiled, and his smile was very clean, making people feel like spring breeze. In fact, the reason is very simple. We Hufflepuffs are the most self-aware. General knowledge is enough for us to study for a lifetime. Most of us Hufflepuffs have mediocre qualifications and do not have enough wisdom and energy to distract ourselves. In this case, it is better to satisfy our appetite. Life, after all, requires a little pursuit. Since other high-end things are not available, food is indeed the easiest desire to obtain. Listening to Cedric's seemingly self-deprecating words, Shaw was somewhat moved. Great wisdom appears foolish. All the same, thousands of years ago, a vigorous witch-hunting movement was launched on the land of Europe. At that time, wizards were taught by the master-apprentice system, and the spellcasting level of wizards was uneven. Many scattered wizards were put on the stake and burned alive by muggles. The 4 founders of Hogwarts founded the first formal magic school in this context. The qualifications of students who can come to study are good and bad. Rowena Ravenclaw only accepts students who are smart and creative. Godric Gryffindor only accepts brave and courageous students. Salazar Slytherin only accepts pureblood students who are smart and ambitious. Helga Hufflepuff is the most inclusive. She is kind and friendly. Any student who is rejected by the other 3 colleges will be generously accepted by Hufflepuff. Therefore, Hufflepuff has the largest number of students, and the quality of students is the most mediocre. But this does not prevent Hufflepuff from cultivating excellent students. History has proven that countless great men are not necessarily smart people, but they are absolutely tenacious. Honest people work hard and go all the way. They face difficulties head-on and are more likely to achieve results. Smart people often like to take advantage of loopholes and shortcuts. They are more likely to be swayed by various temptations and desires. They often fail after encountering setbacks. Hufflepuff students usually have no highlights in the first half of their lives, but they are likely to become great late bloomers. Shaw quickly recalled the information about Hufflepuff, but today he discovered the most fundamental advantage of Hufflepuff: self-knowledge. Don't think that many people have self-knowledge. In fact, most people have a biased understanding of themselves, expecting high but not being able to do well, and being able to do well but not being able to do well can be seen everywhere. Shaw did not have a clear understanding of himself. He was originally a loser and had just entered the magic world. He had a system, money, and background, and his mentality was very chaotic for a while. Although he wanted to show his nobility, he would inevitably reveal his arrogance from time to time. To put it bluntly, it was the mentality of a nouveau riche, so when Shaw heard Cedric's statement about Hufflepuff at this moment, it had a certain impact on his mentality. Sure enough, everyone has his unique wisdom and things to learn, and all he needs is a pair of discerning eyes to discover them. Shaw was taught another lesson, but he was very happy. Cedric watched Shaw fall into deep thought and said a little nervously. "Sure, how is it? We Hufflepuffs are not troublemakers. We have heard about your rules. Although it feels a bit awkward, compared with the delicious food, it seems that this grievance is nothing." Shaw came back to his senses and showed a long-lost smile from the heart. "No problem, don't you need to consult Professor Sprout?" Cedric patted his chest and said confidently. "Our dean is easy to talk to. This is not a bad thing. There is absolutely no problem." Shaw stretched out his hand and shook the other party. "Happy cooperation. Don't worry. As long as you Hufflepuffs follow the rules, you will have plenty of delicious food. I will reveal a piece of news to you in advance. Next year, I will get a 1,000-year-old snake. If you perform well, I will kill the snake for you to eat." As soon as Shaw said this, a series of swallowing sounds rang out. Gulp. Gulp. Some badgers drooled so much that they dripped on the ground. The temptation of the 1,000-year-old snake is indeed extraordinary. Shaw watched the badgers trying to wipe their saliva while staring at him with burning eyes. He felt a little uncomfortable because he was being stared at. However, seeing that the progress of conquering Hogwarts, second ring, has reached 85%, it has jumped a lot. It is estimated that the task will be almost done once these badgers bring the news back. Ahem, okay, let's go. I'll have someone go to your lounge tomorrow to teach you the rules. Cedric wanted to asking about the 1,000-year-old snake. He felt too abrupt, but he couldn't wait to ask. No need to wait until tomorrow, in the evening. No, now, send someone to our place now. We can also eat in the evening. Cough cough. Shaw smiled knowingly and didn't object. Don't be so anxious, don't worry, Hufflepuff's dinner will have enough Chinese food. I will send someone to your place in the evening. Ah, this is great, Shaw. Hufflepuff will always be your most loyal friend. Cedric was delighted, and the badgers behind him almost danced with joy. They were really a group of children who were easily satisfied. Then Shaw separated from them. When passing the hall, he endured the teasing eyes from the Ravenclaw long table, quickly explained a few words to Alice, and ran away. If he didn't run, he would be surrounded by the big sisters who were overflowing with love and broad-minded. Shortly after Shaw returned to the dormitory, he found that the task of Hogwarts, second ring, had reached 99.9%. Shaw was not happy, but speechless. Isn't this teasing him? Huh? Who is it? Who is it? According to this progress, only 1 or 2 little wizards are still resisting. Shaw paced back and forth in the lounge, muttering to himself and thinking in his heart, the little snakes were definitely all defeated, and that was still part of the first round of the task. The little badgers also looked honest and reliable. As for the little eagle, it was a little uncertain. Maybe a male comrade envied that he had taken away the care of the little sister. As for the little lion, it was most likely that there were many people who were not convinced in their hearts, but the task was not to make the students completely loyal. Otherwise this task would not be completed in 100 years. As long as these students obeyed their orders honestly and didn't get angry, it would be fine. Who is it? Shaw couldn't guess, so he could only use a stupid method. After dinner, Alice took 10 people to the Hufflepuff lounge. The little badgers were very worry-free and didn't need him to go out in person. He chose to go to Gryffindor first. He was the deputy head of the school after all, so he had to use his authority. At 7 o'clock, Shaw entered the Gryffindor common room on time. Chapter 80. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The morning and evening self-study sessions stipulated by Shaw are naturally not very popular among students. No one wants to be a hated person, like his great-grandfather Phileas, who left behind a reputation as one of the most unpopular principals after his death. Shaw has no choice, everything is for the mission. After completing the second ring mission, perhaps he can loosen the ropes on the necks of these little wizards, but he can only relax a little, because he has spent a lot of effort. To let these Western children enjoy the Chinese education of love, these people will be his basic base in the future, of course, the stronger the better, and naturally he will not abolish it, maybe occasional relaxation will also gain the gratitude of many people. This principle is very ironic. For example, if you give someone 10 yuan a day, and suddenly forget to give it one day, you will get complaints. But if you give someone a big slap every day, and suddenly don't slap him one day, you will get gratitude. Shaw shook his head and discarded the random thoughts in his mind. His arrival attracted the attention of the little lions. Shaw rarely came except for the first 3 days when he was more diligent. During those 3 days, he punished more than a dozen people and set up a supervision team, so the little lions dared not get angry in public. Shaw didn't care about the calculations behind the scenes. After that, he only received reports from Percy every 3 days and regularly gave the twins a wake-up call. The other punishments were a thick sea of questions. Well, Professor McGonagall has been very irritable recently, so the little lions are still having a hard time, but it's not to mention that the self-study here is not as quiet as Slytherin. Although it's inevitable to whisper to each other in secret, the current study style of Gryffindor has improved a lot. Of course, we have to ignore that many little lions twist their buttocks from time to time, as if they have hemorrhoids. When Shaw appeared, the little lions didn't expect Shaw to come to Gryffindor again today. Shaw's reputation in the Lions' Court is no longer the same as before, and many people got up from their desks. The man made a knight's salute to Shaw, and the woman made a lady's salute with her arm in hand. "Hello, Vice Dean." "Hello, Vice Dean." That the voices calling for the Vice Dean also rose and fell. Although it looked a little weird, it was also a huge improvement, better than the mess. All right, sit down and study hard, don't worry about me." While Shaw nodded and waved, asking everyone to sit down, he walked towards Percy's position, and smiled at Harry when he passed by. He also saw the crooked-mouthed and squinting twins smiling at him with a servile look, which made Shaw smile. Two funny guys. Percy's position was a small platform, which was not as high as Shaw's supervisory position in Slytherin. Percy didn't have such a reputation yet, and his small platform was just for supervision. The girls in the supervisory group also studied here. Percy stood straight at this moment, with a serious look, as if he was meeting a leader. Shaw looked at Weasley, who looked a little tired, and knew that it was because of his declining prestige after losing the duel that day. He did not persuade him. Percy was a smart man. With himself as an example, he would sooner or later understand the essence of power. "Hello, Vice Dean, welcome to Gryffindor again. Do you have anything to announce?" Shaw smiled warmly. "Percy, don't be so nervous, be happy. I have nothing to do this time. I just want to see what Gryffindor looks like after Nirvana." Percy suddenly realized and frowned. "I betrayed your trust and let Kenneth and the others." Shaw waved his hand. "Don't say that. There are also bad people in Slytherin. People's hearts are complicated and no one can see through them." Although Shaw was chatting with Percy, his attention was always on other young wizards in the lounge. Before coming in, he drank the perception potion. He just wanted to catch the person who was not convinced in his heart. After chatting quietly with Percy for a while, I still didn't notice any unfriendly looks. Even Kenneth in the corner didn't show any strange look anymore. I guess he was really beaten. Well, maybe he was subdued by the biological weapons. Shaw turned to ask Percy. "Are all the students here today?" Hearing this, Percy quickly took out a notebook to check. "Deputy Dean, Neville and my brother Ron, who are first years, were caught by the Dean for violating school rules this afternoon. They are now in detention with the Dean." Shaw understood and reached out to pat Percy's shoulder, but Percy was taller than Shaw, so it was a bit inconvenient. But when the other party saw this, he quickly bowed slightly to make it easier for Shaw to pat him. Shaw admired Percy more and more. It's not that the other party is keen on power, but he has a look at the superiors. Maybe in the eyes of others, Percy flatters, but in the eyes of the superiors, this is an excellent subordinate. "Okay, I'm leaving first. Do your best and don't be afraid of offending people. If you make a mistake, you will be punished directly. If you can't handle it, report it to me." Shaw patted Percy on the shoulder, encouraged him, and then went to the entrance of the lounge. The little lions stood up again to see him off. Shaw felt the enthusiasm of these little lions. After being really convinced, there were not so many twists and turns. After leaving the lounge, Shaw thought about it and hesitated for a while between going to the Ravenclaw lounge or Professor McGonagall's office. In the end, he chose Professor McGonagall's office from his heart. After a while, he came to the professor's office. Just as he was about to knock on the door, he heard the angry scolding of the big cat faintly from inside. "Ron! Look at you, you don't study hard, and you want to make trouble with Neville. The restricted area on the 4th floor is strictly forbidden. Do you think the headmaster's warning at the opening ceremony is just a deaf ear? Neville said you want to be in the limelight. Want to investigate the truth there to make a splash. You are simply courting death. I am really mad at you. Your 2 oldest brothers are the pride of Gryffindor. Even if George and Fred are a little naughty, they are also smart and know not to do things that will get you killed. But what about you? You are not motivated in your studies, and you don't know enough about your own strength. What's more, you drag Neville who wants to study hard with you." Shore shook his head when he heard it outside. Ron is really a little speechless now. I didn't expect that Ron was still very concerned about the fact that I blocked Harry from following the plot. I didn't want to disturb McGonagall's education of students, but Shaw suddenly had an idea and knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Squeak. After more than 10 seconds, Professor McGonagall opened the door and saw that it was Shaw. She was stunned and asked. "Sure. Are you here to ask about Transfiguration?" "Yes, Professor, I have some doubts that I need to ask you." "Oh, please come in." Shore followed McGonagall, whose chest was still heaving, into the office. He saw Ron and Neville lowering their heads, writing furiously in a pile of test papers. Then, Shaw felt a flash of resentful eyes. Neville was shivering and buried his head in the test papers. The look was sent by Ron when he quickly raised his head. Shaw narrowed his eyes slightly, and his intuition told him, "Found it."